This is the It's Not So Late show with your host, Aaron Hanania, the voice of young America, interviewing celebrities, influencers, and exploring unique and interesting stories that you need to hear. And now, please welcome your host of the It's Not So Late show, Aaron Hanania!
Joining me now is Paul Konrad, member of the WGN morning news team, Chicagoland's most watched and top-rated morning show. In addition to being a 9-time Emmy Award-winning television weather anchor, Konrad is one of the nicest and funniest TV personalities, reflecting the humor that WGN's morning show brings to audiences with Larry Podass, Robin Baumgarten, and Pat Tomasulo. He also hosts the Courtesy Desk segment at WGN, which looks at interesting facts of the history of WGN in a humorous way and takes suggestions from viewers. So thank you so much for joining me today, Mr. Konrad.
Listen, it's great to be here. I appreciate the invitation.
Of course. So, in addition to providing, news and information, you guys do it in a hilarious way. So, do you think that leads to helping your show be successful as it is?
Yeah, I think so. I think that news, you can get it anywhere, right? You can get it on your phone. I get it primarily off my phone, and people want information, but I also think that they don't want to be beat up every morning with the worst news of the day, right? Like, you want to be informed as to what's going on. You want the information. You want to know weather, traffic, but you also don't want to, at the end of watching a newscast, to feel like you need to go run out into traffic to off yourself because the day is filled with such miserable news. And so I think what we've been trying to do here for a while now is to provide this alternative where we're going to give you the content that you need to know. We're also going to try to have some fun along the way and kind of do this entertainment personality driven show. And it's been successful. It's crazy that it's been on for, I think, 26, 27 years and has had the success that it has had. But I'm thrilled to be a part of it.
That's awesome. So these routines, how do you guys work this out? Do you guys meet beforehand, almost like a think tank, come up with the ideas? Do you get some help with the producers? How does it work? Because you guys pull this off flawlessly. I know this morning I watched you guys, I think you did 6 or 7 of those segments back to back to back, almost like rapid fire. How do you guys come up with those ideas?
Well, we've got a lot of great producers. That's one of the biggest benefits of being there, is that we were staffed well. We don't rehearse. That, I think, is something that helps us. I think the other part of it is that we've got a bunch of people that are savvy improvisers, right. And we've got enough producers to kind of say, I'm going to throw them this material and I'm going to trust that they're going to use it and have some fun along the way and make it work. But we've got so many talented people. We got Robin, who she can talk for 3 days if you want her to about, you pick a topic. And she's just got this personality that is so winsome and authentic. And then we got snarky Pat Tomasulo, who's willing to take an opposing position. We just have enough of the kind of goofball personalities that it works somehow or another.
Right, and I was going to talk about, Pat does comedy, and you're a funny guy, so do you guys ever clash, when during the segments, where you guys are throwing jokes back and forth? How does that work out?
Here's the truth on that is it works out really well, because I think ultimately, like, everybody on our show knows that we care for, trust, and respect each other, right? Like, we can make fun of Robin, which we love to do, because she knows that in real life and ultimately that we authentically do care for her, right? And so there's this safety where, and also the other part of it is that none of us take ourselves so seriously that we feel like, oh, you can't joke about me. None of us kind of fall into that category. We kind of recognize we're just all happen to be a couple of very fortunate mopes who have all kind of landed it together and have had a lot of success. But none of us take ourselves serious enough that we're offended by each other. So we kind of care for each other. That makes it safe for us to make fun of each other and not worry about getting called into human resources or getting fired or any of that other stuff. So I think that's kind of the magic of it. Plus, like, we've been around for a long time. So Rob and I started working together, I hate to say this, but maybe like 28, 29 years ago. And we've been working side by side at WGN for the last 25. And Larry's been there for 27, and Pat's been there, I think, for 15. So there's these long-term relationships that are genuine, and we care about each other, and it just gives us this freedom and safety to have fun and not worry that if I call wrong or she's going to be mad about it.
Right. And, that's something about WGN. When you got into this career of, journalism and video journalism, did you expect to go that route, or did you go to expect maybe like your parent, like a competitor company like ABC7, where it's very straightforward? It's only the news. There's no fun. There's no jokes. How did that come into play? Did you expect that?
Yeah.
This?
Yeah. So I think all of us kind of started in this straightforward news business, right? And, I have long said that I find TV news, especially local TV news, incredibly boring and predictable. Right. Like they're going to do these 10 stories, and then they're going to run some stupid little kicker story, and then they're going to toss it to the weatherman, and they're going to have a fake laugh, and then he's going to go on for 3 minutes, and nothing is interesting. It's all kind of pre-scripted, and you're reading someone else's words. And the point of TV news that was interesting was if like the teleprompter broke or something fell, all of a sudden you would have like a fraction of a second where you would see the real person, the real authentic person. And that to me was the only interesting part of a newscast, and you couldn't count on it. So we set out long ago to kind of figure out how do we break these rules and make stuff spontaneous and interesting and not predictable and not know how it's going to end. And the idea was if people kind of stick around to kind of see this isn't the way it's normally done, and these guys are kind of breaking the rules. Are they going to get fired, or how's this thing going to play out? And that has kind of been, I think, a lot of the success. And I think local news has in many ways only gotten worse, right? Like more stiff and predictable. And I kind of like that 25 years ago, we were kind of the first ones in local news to try to break the predictability up a little bit.
Right. And I think with breaking that predictability, the difficulty is it is a risk. Like, it is a big risk because no one else had done it. And you guys have done it so fantastically. And now something else I want to talk with you is you do meteorology. That in itself changes from day to day. So what happens on your end if, let's say you say it's going to be rainy and sunny one day, and then all of a sudden the storm comes out of nowhere, and at noon it's pouring down rain when you said it was supposed to be sunny, walking your dogs outside type weather. What happens there?
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's never happened to me personally, but I've heard about this happening to guys in the business. But so here's what I know to be true is that I think in Chicago, people think that the weatherman is wrong 75 to 85% of the time. And I had kept track over the years. I think I'm actually like 83% accurate regularly, right? But because the expectations are so low, everyone thinks some of these guys are wrong all the time. Anyhow, it's a very low threshold that we have to live up to, right? The other benefit that we have is that I work in the same office as Tom Skilling, who is like the god of weather in Chicago, and he's so widely respected around the world that there is this kind of responsibility where we really need to, surprisingly, a lot of time really thinking through, all right, how do we make sure we don't screw this forecast up and get it as close as we can get? And that ultimately is our number one priority. And along with when it becomes severe weather time, we need to be ready to roll so that we can let people know what exactly is going on. And there have been enough days over the last 25 years where we have completely screwed the pooch and gone with a high of 52, and it gets up to 31 and there's snowing. And I am just at this point like, we messed up. We got it wrong. We bought into the wrong data, and we'll try again the next day. And I think I think people are in Chicago, especially, they're just kind of like, listen, we know it's a crapshoot a lot of times, and so many people have been wrong along with you that no one's overly offended by any of it.
Oh my gosh. And yeah, you've been doing this such a long time that I'm sure things have changed, right? So maybe can we talk a little bit about what's changed? Because maybe you can explain to the viewers a little bit what goes into putting together a forecast? Because I know that there's a lot of computer softwares, there's a lot of almost like graphic design. I don't think people realize that's all you. There's no guy doing the button. It is entirely you. So would you be able to talk maybe a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it used to be, I started in the business in 1988.
Wow.
Long before the internet and cell phones and all that other stuff, right? And so we would get data off of some wire service that they would draw up these maps and charts. And with time, thank God we've got the internet. Able to used to be we would have a satellite link that would download images and satellite data and numerical models, and we would spend all of our time looking at these models and try to come up with our forecast. Well, now so much of that is available. Frankly, you can get almost all of it on your phone whenever you want. And so it's just changed dramatically. And so the data and the models, the number of models and the quality of these forecast models have really transformed our ability to be accurate, to handle storms remarkably better. And just technology is completely different, right? Like now, if you want to look at the radar, you've got it right on your phone. Back 25, 30 years ago, just getting a radar shot was a huge task. So it is cool the way technology has transformed everything. So part of what we do every morning is that we look through 15, 20 forecast models where one might say today's high is going to be 75, and another might say today's high is going to be 95. One might say, one will say no, one will say rain's going to come at 1, other one says it's going to come at 7. And so our job is to kind of filter through and say, we're putting all of our eggs in the basket that there's going to be no rain and we're going to get up to 72. And we're looking at a lot of different data sets. So there are a lot of elements to the job, the combination of kind of being a graphic artist at the lowest level of whatever that means, and then the forecasting analyst, grabbing all that data. We have to present the information clearly. And I also feel like along with that, you got to make it interesting somehow. We have this balance of making the weather relevant, efficient, interesting, and clear, right? So that people at the end of it go, okay, I know today's going to be 78 degrees. And so, there's more that goes into it. The other part of it that has changed is, like in the mornings, we have a thing where we send out a text message to all of our viewers that I have to send this text message out saying, here's a forecast for today. We do a Facebook forecast. We are sending stuff out to Twitter. Wow. We do stuff for advertisers. We record stuff for WGN Radio. We used to publish stuff for the page of the Chicago Tribune. That's all handled in the afternoon hours. So there's all these other tasks that go along with the job that you wouldn't realize all have to play out. And then on top of that, I'm producing my courtesy desk segments along with one of our producers, Jeff Hoover. We write lists for the 9 o'clock show. So there's all these things that wind up that take time and energy and thought to produce it and make it work. You don't ever see until we throw it out on the air. So there's a lot that goes into it.
Wow. But if there's a really big, let's say a tornadic event, how does that change? Because now you have to do this on the spot while you're also live on TV. Does that add any added challenges or whatnot?
Yeah, I will say that's a stressful thing for us, because to go from this show where you're in the entertainment business to this mindset of we have a responsibility here that if we don't get this information right, people's lives are at risk, right? So that weighs heavily on all of us. And thankfully, we kind of, a good 12 hours or 2 days in advance oftentimes that, hey, there's a potential on Thursday morning that there could be some strong storms. Kind of are gearing up knowing that potential exists. And then the closer we get into that window, you're absolutely right. One of the other nice things about working in the mornings is that we're not typically dealing with a lot of severe weather. That usually happens in the afternoon or evening hours. But nonetheless, if we see it's coming, we kind of know, I can't be dressed in drag and riding a donkey through the newsroom while there is a severe thunderstorm or tornado breaking out. And that's kind of the risk for our entire show, is that we don't want to just be viewed as these goofball entertainers, but that we also are capable of handling serious news because ultimately we do want to get the content out, and we want to be trustworthy and fair presenters of the information. And after a while, we also want to have some fun with it along the way. So it's really complex to do all of it.
Oh, it sounds like it. So over your career, would you say that there's one story or one, thing you had to cover that just stands out above some of the other ones in your mind? It could be related to, the meteorology. It could be related to just the news desk. It could be whatever you want.
Yeah, I think the one story that always sticks out in my mind is back when I first started working, I was working as a news photographer.
Wow.
And I had a long day. And I'll be honest with you, I hated being a news photographer because you kind of have this front row look at the side and the kind of like the tragedies that take place, right? Like you're pulling up to fires where people's are either dying or they've lost their homes or whatever it is, right? And the one story that always sticks in my mind was I got called as I was driving home from work after an already long day. I was told that I needed to go cover this shooting of a 16-year-old boy that he was dead. And so I show up with my camera gear, and there is this 16-year-old boy dead in the front lawn of this house, and his mother and sister were in hysterics. And I pull up with my camera to take pictures of it, and I'm supposed to interview the mom or get some sound from there.
Right.
And like I was disturbed. Like I was probably 22, 23 years old at the time. And it was just disturbing and sad to see all of this in front of me, right?
Right.
And then I'm thinking, somehow or other I'm supposed to go talk to this lady who is in hysterics and she has just lost everything. And I'm going to go ask her for an interview to talk to me in the middle of all this. It just didn't sit well with me at all, right? Like, and I thought, this blows. I'm not going to do that. So I found the police officer, the media rep, and I did an interview with him. And I called the station. I said, I got an interview with the cops. I'm headed back to the station. I've got the video. And my boss said, I want an interview with the mom. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that because she's in hysterics and she's in a bad place. I don't feel good about doing that. Right. And he said, well, I just saw her on NBC. She just did an interview and you need to get the interview. And I said, I don't feel comfortable with it. He goes, that's fine. Then you can turn in your gear and you're fired.
Wow.
Or else get the interview. Wow. And I'm like, boy, this blows. This is a bad situation to be in, right? So I'm like, all right, this is part of the job. Like that's part of what journalism is about. So I got to find a way where I can walk up to this lady. And to be honest with you, I felt like I was really compromising my ethics, or I don't know if it was my ethics, my values, right? For sure. And so I walked up to her and I said the only thing that could give me enough space to encourage to get up there, which was I just said I was so sorry for your loss, and maybe something that you can tell me about your son that will help us figure out who shot and killed him, which was all true. I didn't really, to be honest with you, I don't know that I really meant it. I was just trying to find some way to be able to justify kind of taking from her in that worst moment. And the reality for me, like contrary to what people might think, I'm a tender-hearted guy, right? Who just, my heart was broken for this woman and her daughter. And what I really wanted to say was, how can I help you? I'm really sorry for all that you are suffering with. And I wanted to give her a hug or do something, right? But you can't do that in the news business, right? You have to kind of stand back. And I'll be honest with you, at the end of that day, I was like, screw this. I got to get out of this business because this part of it blows and I'm not wired for that. And what's true is that there are people in our business who are wired perfectly for that, who can separate themselves and they can ask those really difficult questions to people in their worst moments. And they're doing good, like they're doing honorable work. I'm not in any way saying that what they're doing is not noble. They're just wired differently and they can do it. But it ultimately wound up leading, I got back to the station and I went back to the weather office where my best friend was. And I said, this day completely sucks. And I told him about what played out. And he goes, yeah, you need to get out of the news department and you need to get into the weather office. This is where you can have a normal life. You can dig into stuff that you enjoy. And that was the beginning of me getting out of hard news and really beginning to pursue forecasting. And it turned out to be a pivotal day for me in the long term of my career, because it moved me ultimately into the weather side of things, which has lasted for me a good 20, 30 years.
Oh my gosh, that's an incredible story. Now, in addition to doing weather, as we were talking too, we can transfer from like a more somber note to a more happy note. You do all sorts of things.
Yeah.
I know you do this pedicab routine with, and I just saw that you had Tom Skilling. How do you do it? How do you get your guests? Can I join you sometime? Because that just seems fun.
Yeah. Yeah. So it started off as this Konrad in a van in the parking lot, which was this idea of just trying to have some format where we can screw around with the people that our viewers see every day at WGN and see them in a different context, right? And then when COVID hit, we couldn't do anything in cars or vans. We just kind of had to shut it down. And then we were trying to figure, well, how do we bring it back? And the best way to bring it back was to do something open air. And we went with this idea of a pedicab, right? We circled the parking lot, and literally some of the people we have to contact, like Skilling, the producer has to talk to the news director and say, hey, can we have Skilling? He asks Skilling, and Skilling then says, yeah, I'll come in an hour early and we can hang out. And but there are certain people like that. And there's other people that I know I can just run into them in the parking lot and they'll be glad to sit in there and we can make some stuff happen. But Skilling, while I'm on the subject of him, is just an amazing guy, right? Like, it is so cool to work in an office with this guy who has a mind like I have never experienced anybody before, because he is brilliance that, I don't, it's almost like he's a savant, right? Who can pull numbers and has got this memory recall that I've never seen. One year we had these guys showing us, some sales guys were trying to sell us satellite data, and they came in and they set up all these monitors with this satellite loop on it. And Skilling looks at it and goes, oh, that's August 14th, 1997. I remember that day. We had a high of 84. And I'm looking at it going, I can't believe, like, I couldn't tell you what the satellite looked like this morning, let alone he's got recall from 10, 15 years ago. So he's got this mind that is beyond anything that I've seen. One day it rained like 2.84 inches of rain in an hour. And Tom says, how much rain was? I go 2.84. And in his head, he was mathematically calculating the millions of gallons of water that were falling per second in Cook County. And that's a long number. And he writes it out, and I'm like, this guy, he's a genius, right? So it's cool working with him, and he's got this great heart. He's a good-hearted guy as well. So it's cool to work in his office. To be honest with you, I get a lot of positive credibility just working in the same office with him, because people assume they're not going to hire this moron. He's going to screw up Skilling stuff. So that helps me out a little bit. I think people trust me a little bit more.
So what do you guys do together? So you're saying you're working in the same office. I'm not really familiar with like the weather office. What is your interaction like on a typical day? Is he there like nowadays, like now at this time, working for his forecast later tonight?
Well, everything got changed around with COVID, right? So it used to be that he would do the noon show. And so we would run into each other a lot more often then. But now that he's just doing late afternoons and evenings, he's usually rolling in around 1 the majority of the time. And so I don't typically see him. But with COVID, it was so weird, because for a long stretch, no one was working in the weather office. And then for the last maybe 6 or 8 months, I was the only one working out of there. I'm in there by myself. There's room for like a dozen people in there. Wow. And it was odd just being the only person in there. But one of the things that is cool, so like typically, because Demetrius Ivory does our 11 to 1 show, I'll see him as I'm leaving, and typically we'll have a brief conversation if we've made a graphic or we're looking at this particular model and thinking that we'll have a quick debrief or something along those lines. But it's never terribly formal. And there is this thing, right, where people often say, well, why don't you just run Skilling's forecast from the night prior? And the reality is we're looking at forecast models that have new data every hour. And so as much as easy as it would be to run Skilling's from the night before, frankly, by the time we even get in, 80% of the data is old and we've got new information to work from.
Wow, that's crazy. And you were talking about COVID here, and there's a couple things I'll talk about that because you guys did a socially distance, and at points you did a stay-at-home broadcast. So how did that work? Doing broadcasting from your own house with like equipment and stuff. Please, like share a little bit about that if you can, because that's impressive that you guys had to do that.
Yeah, you will be amazed to know how simple it wound up being. So basically, what they did was they gave me like 3 laptops and 4 monitors and a software program for my iPhone. And they told me to find a stand for my iPhone, run the software program, and that was going to be how I was going to get on the air. And literally every day for 6-8 months, I was doing the show off of iPhone.
Wow.
Which you kind of go, that's insane, right? And all of us were, right? Like pretty much everybody who was working from home, the great majority of them were doing it off of their iPhones. So that to me is crazy that technology has come that far, right?
Yeah.
Frankly, if I wanted to get on WGN right now, I've got the software on my phone and I could call them up and say, hey, take me right now. And within 5 minutes, I could be on TV. It's
Wow.
crazy.
That isn't, and that was all done on Wi-Fi. I'm assuming. Like, just that is incredible that works. And also,
Yeah, that was a big, that was the hardest part, was to make sure that everyone had enough juice in their Wi-Fi to make sure that you weren't going to freeze thing. And I've got pretty good Wi-Fi here at my house, so it was crazy, right? And as far as lighting goes, everyone was kind of just figuring it out on their own. I went and bought one of those ring lights
yeah.
and I attached my camera to it, and it worked out perfectly, right?
Yeah, and you didn't even have to. We always thought, they would always talk about the view from your house. That's gotta be nice. Don't not having to go into work. But the real question is, were you like dressed from the waist up,
Yeah.
or were you for the whole body? Were you dressed, and like or did you have like the pajama pants on, under with your polo shirt?
Yeah. I always was wearing shorts. I don't think that I was wearing shorts. The other secret part of it is that throughout the show, like there's typically my longest, window of more than 10 minutes. But about a month and a half into it, I figured out I've got a window here of 10 minutes where I can run downstairs, I could get some breakfast and still get back on the air within 10 minutes and feel fresh. And so that became this regular routine where I'm like, all right, I can get a lot done here in 10 minutes. So that was it. There was a lot of convenience from working from home.
Oh my gosh! And then the beard. Can you talk about that? I know you were growing out a beard during COVID. Was that just you still have it? Was that just like a COVID thing? Just to help get you through?
I think a lot of it. I don't even know. There was a stretch where it was getting really long and bushy. I think a lot of it is just keeping it simple for me. And when you're waking up in the middle of the night, you're typically trying to figure out, all right, what is the least that I can do so that I can sleep longer? And I think that kind of became the thing that really drove the beard for a long period of time. And now I'm kind of like, I'm just going to stick with it for a while.
That's awesome. So now that we're back in the studio, you have this thing called, and I want to talk to the viewers about this Friday forecaster, where you bring in a young student to do a forecast. How does that work out? Because that's always got to be a risk. This is important time for people to see the weather. And if this is the only time they have, how do you do that? What goes into it?
Another fun part of the show. So we have this relationship with a company called WeatherBug, and throughout Chicagoland, school purchases WeatherBug equipment, and there's some programs that go along with it. And so what we have done is we contact those schools that have the WeatherBug equipment. We ask the principal, can you send us your best, 7 to 10-year-old kid? And we're going to have them be our Friday forecast. I think the reason why it works is because there's a good deal of suspense and unpredictability in how a 7-year-old is going to handle themselves being on TV, right? Like they could have a meltdown, they could say something they're not supposed to say. And so for me, that's the fun of that segment, is just trying to see, all right, are we going to get something out of this kid that might be interesting? The downside also is that sometimes you get some kids who have nothing to say, and you're really just kind of milking it for anything that you can get. But it has turned out, I think, to be the other reality is we're constantly running the crawl underneath. I always go back and forth with on a severe weather day, forecaster, but most people kind of get it. We're going to take one of our 5,000 weather hits in the morning and give one to a kid. And I think there's enough entertainment value in there. And the kids typically get the forecast in there as well. And it's just worked out to be a nice segment that I'll be also, in honesty for me also, there's so much negative stuff in our news and in our culture around kids, and we see the worst of our society. We put it on display in our newscast every day, right? And so the idea that we're saying, hey, we're pulling one of the best kids out of a school and we're going to give him the limelight so that maybe we're reminded in a small way that really the great majority of what's going on in this country is being done by really good people. Right. And so I think there's some value and be an innocent little kid be excited about being on TV. And I like that part of it.
I like that too. And something else I want to do is I want to play a quick game with you that I have. What I love doing on these shows is kind of switching the tables here. You guys play games.
Good. All right.
Now I'm gonna play games with you, and this is rapid fire with Paul Konrad and Aaron Hanania. And Paul, the rules of this game are really simple. I'm gonna be asking you a series of questions that are pretty simple, and you're just gonna answer them as quickly as you can. Are you ready? Flavor?
I'm ready. All right. Yeah, let's go.
All right. I don't want the first one. What's your favorite ice cream?
Vanilla.
If you had one wish, what would it be and why?
My one wish would be to live forever.
Ooh, I like that.
Why? Because I'd like to see what's going on playing in the future.
I like that, and we can get your forecast forever. We'll never see the end of a Paul Konrad forecast. I like that. If you had one if you had one superpower for one day, what superpower would you want to have?
I would like to be able to be invisible and sneak in and see what's going on in big places.
I like that. Now, is a hot dog considered a sandwich?
No, that's not.
Do you have any cool hidden talents?
I don't. I'm sad to say I don't think I really do. I've long thought that I could do this show, that was done in mime that I've been pushing, and I have come to learn that it blows and it's not worth doing. So I thought it was something special, but I've come to accept that it's not that good.
Can I ask you? This is not a question on the card. Where did you come up with the idea for a show like that? I'm just genuinely interested.
Yeah. I think I did this courtesy desk segment once, and it was sock puppet day or something like that. And I remember taking my shoes off and my socks off, and Robin Baumgart so feet that she couldn't bear to watch it, right? And so I've got my two socks on my hand, trying to do this stupid sock puppet skit. And she was more offended by my feet than by the sock puppets. And I thought, I'm going to keep pursuing that. And that's kind of where it all began.
Oh, my God. That is too funny. Now, what's a favorite quote or saying that you live by?
I would say bend at the knees. It's one of the, in life, things get heavy. If you don't bend at the knees, you're going to throw your back out or something's not going to go right. The other one that I use on occasion is to not sweat the petty things, to pet the sweaty things. And that always gets me in trouble as well.
Do you have a favorite TV show or movie other than WGN News?
I'm not a TV watcher, and I'm not a movie guy either.
Maybe if you maybe you're a reader type person then instead of movies?
I'm not a reader either. That's the other sad part of it. I read a lot of news information stuff, but I used to say that my favorite movie was this movie called Waking Ned Devine, which was some Irish independent film. And when I saw it, I thought, oh, this is really a great movie. And so then I talked my daughter into watching it with me, 10 years later, and we watched it. I'm like, that movie wasn't really that good. I don't know why I thought it was that great of a movie. It was average at best. So I'll stick with Waking Ned Devine.
Thank you for playing Rapid Fire. And before we go, are there any big news stories you can give me so I can have a big headline out of this at the Tribune? So all the news we got. So we got David Muir.
Let's see. Yeah, let's see. I mean, the best big headline. Let's see. The only thing that's coming to my mind right now is that I've been at the station for a long time, and I've built up all this vacation time that I've not been able to use. And the headline for me is that I think I'm only working like 10 days now in August 15th. So I've got like this amazing summer of non-work ahead of me, and that's as good of a headline as I could ask for.
Oh, I like that. I like that. So where can people find you on social media aside from TV? Do you have do you do any podcasts or anything like that where they can listen to?
Yeah. So I'm on Twitter at Paul Konrad. I am on Instagram at WGN Conrad, and I am on Facebook at WGN Paul Konrad. In a good, solid marketing scheme, I've got all three of those with different addresses to confuse people and make it even harder for them to find me. So I don't do a ton of social media. I know it's important. At times I'm kind of like, oh, social media, it's a lot of work. And there's also a lot of BS on there that I like my time with that stuff for. But I'm there, and I'm probably on Instagram the most, posting stuff about what I'm up to.
I like that. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you guys for listening. This is Aaron Hanania with Paul Konrad.